everybody else on the call, we're planning to have two mini presentations today. First, Nicholas Rejack from Florida on DChecker.
Everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
And then the next talk will be from Justin Littman on a name parsing utility. So that's what we have set up for today.
And I'm about to make Nicholas the presenter.
All right.
Hi,
everybody. I'm Nicholas Rejack from University of Florida CTS IT. So I worked a lot on VIVO in my early time here at UF, and I've been working on some other projects, but now I'm coming back to do some more work on VIVO lately. So I'm excited to present to you DChecker, which is a tool that we built in-house here to keep tabs on our VIVO. So the rationale behind this, to give you an idea of why we developed this, we were seeing a lot of data errors in VIVO, whether they came from hand editing or from ingest that we needed to do some corrections on. These would appear as broken links in the VIVO interface. So we wanted to be able to run SPARQL queries on a regular basis and get a report on errors that we could fix. So DChecker is a Python program. It's available on GitHub, and you can see the GitHub page for it right here, and I'll paste the link into the chat. It is pretty simple. We run it out of a cron job every day, and we get an emailed report. And basically, we have a directory of queries. That's a queries directory right here. These are all SPARQL queries, and the operation is pretty simple. You drop a query into the bucket right here, and it runs the query for you. So here's an example of one query that we have to run. We have to make sure we don't have anybody added to this department. And standard SPARQL query right there, and it gets run by DChecker. So what I like to do is walk you through downloading and installing this and give you an idea how it works, configuring it and running it. Might be overstating that a little bit because the configuration is pretty simple, but the directions for installation are right here in the readme.md. So you do need Python 2.7. My terminal window right here. So I do have Python 2.7 running. Do a little window swapping so we can get everything on the screen. Make that a little bigger. Okay, so I'm going to clone the repo. It does require that you have Git if you want to install it this way. So clone the repo pretty quick. I'm going to cd into that. Now we like to use virtual env for Python installations. I'm guessing a lot of people are familiar with this, but if you're not, what this does is when you install a Python module, it isolates it from your system-wide Python modules. So this is a good way to make sure that you're not doing any dependency clashing. If you want to do development, you want to try different versions of different libraries like requests or something like that to test it out. This is just a good way to isolate your environments, and we actually use this for some of our production deployments to isolate versions from each other. So I already have virtual env installed. I'll skip that step, but I'll invoke it saying virtual env, and you give it a name for the virtual environment. Just call it venv. And what this does is it makes a copy of your Python executable in this subdirectory, the venv directory. And I can source that, source venv. Can everybody read the terminal? Should I make it a little bigger?
It looks good.
I can read it, yeah.
Okay, all right, I'll just keep going right ahead then. So I'll source that, deactivate script, and now if I do which Python, I'm using the Python that I just created in the virtual environment. Okay, so now let's install DChecker. Pretty quick, make an egg file, and then install that into my virtual environment. All right, that was pretty quick. And if I do which dchecker, yep, that's my virtual environment dchecker. Okay, so moving right down the README, the configuration, like I said, is very simple. So here's a sample configuration file. Dchecker emails out a report, so you need to specify the from and the to, and a mail server you can send from. And you also need a SPARQL endpoint to connect to. I will say, please don't hammer our UF endpoint, but you're welcome to use it if you want to try running dchecker against it. If you want to run it against your own endpoint, of course, you can substitute that in here. So I've got this set up now to run against the UF endpoint, and it's going to be sending a report to my email address when it finishes. All right, so I'm going to save this in the dchecker directory, and I'm going to save it under config as demo.cfg. So now I'm ready to run, and all I have to do is dchecker and dchecker demo.cfg, just specify the configuration file, and it starts right up. And console, what you're seeing is it lists out all the queries that it's going to run, and it's going to run them one at a time. So the first one already came back. We saw that came back as 0, which is good. That's what we want to see. The query is structured to return a 0 if it passes. It's running a few more duplicated dept IDs, and it's just going to go through all these queries that we saw in the queries directory.
So I think one of the things to point out,
I will say,
I was just going to say, Nicholas, one of the things that Nicholas did that was very ingenious was that you can drop a query in here as long as the query returns a numeric result, either 0 or non-zero, because the logic in dchecker checks the output to make sure that if it's non-zero or 0, it copies that to the email report and sends it along, right? Something like that?
Yeah. We did some expanding this too, so if it returns a non-zero result, if there are some errors you have to clean up, you get the VIVO URI in the email report, so you can click right through to VIVO and start editing that. So what I'm going to do is I made a duplicate in VIVO, and I want to find that. So I'm going to do a little swap here in the query file. So I'm going to move all but one of the queries out of the directory so we can see what happens when it finds some bad data. All right, so in my queries, I've just got that one. Maybe it'll trip up on the directory. I don't know. That'll be interesting. So let's just invoke dchecker again. Yeah, that's what I thought would happen. Okay, move that out. Try it again. Ooh, okay.
The DS store file, maybe? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. Okay. Okay, so it's running the duplicated UFIDs. UFIDs are our internal UF identifier. So there are some. It should find those in a second. So like I said earlier, it's nice to run this out of cron because some of the queries are pretty slow. So you just get a report in your email in the morning. Looks like I have a packaging issue, so unfortunately, I'm not going to see the result from that one. But I'll show you an example of a completed report that we got earlier today. This is what came out this morning. And you can just scan this pretty quickly. You can see it's all 0, so there's nothing to clean up. Some of the ideas I have for improvement in the future, I just changed all the queries to work with VIVO 1.6, but they are a lot of UF-specific queries, so I'd like to add some more. Anybody who wants to submit a pull request to add more queries, that'd be more than welcome for sure. I'm totally open to contributions. Also, another issue is that some of the queries we had to remove when we went to 1.6 because they weren't performing as well as on previous versions of VIVO. So here's an example of one that we used to run that we had to modify. So this query would go after non-UF organizations that had more than one RDFS label. So we had a filter in there just to filter out anything that was non-UF organization. And we couldn't get this returning in a reasonable amount of time in VIVO 1.6. I'm not sure the exact reason for that, but we ended up removing it. So there's definitely a little more experimentation to be done on our side with how we can have the queries return a little faster. So that's really all I have. I'm open to any questions anyone has, or
Everybody's politely muted, so maybe they're trying to unmute to ask a question.
I just want to say I either talked to you or saw you give a presentation about this a couple of years ago maybe, and it gave some ideas that we implemented at Brown, sort of the same thing where you can run SPARQL queries to find inconsistencies in your data overnight and then either get a report like this or even do some updates depending on what the issues were. So it sort of something kind of this idea, you can take it and do a lot with it. So thanks for sharing this a couple years ago and again today.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. There's definitely some room for improvement. I've been trying to work on some of the packaging aspects of it, here and there, but it's been pretty useful for finding things that we otherwise previously would have gone months without us noticing. We don't check every single time that we do an ingest if we add people to the wrong department and things like that. So, yeah.
And again, this is Nicholas has this on GitHub. There's a link in the chat, but I'll also put them in the. I believe it's in the notes. If not, I'll put it in the notes as well. But yeah, definitely, it's a Oh, there we go. Thanks. It's an interesting methodology, and I don't know. Once you guys that are new start ingesting data, you'll start to see that sometimes things don't go the way you plan. And then also, as we've upgraded year over year, you can see that there's just some data inconsistencies that can develop. And so this is just one good way to check for it. Well, thank you very much, Nicholas. Yeah, Nicholas was actually the very first Apps and Tools presentation almost 2.5 years ago. And it was dchecker. So it's good to see that you've been around this long and that it's been working for that long.
Definitely. Thanks, everybody.
Well, let's see. Justin, are you ready to go? I can hand control over to you. Make presenter. Awesome, we can see your screen.
Yeah, I just always find it really difficult to unmute myself for some reason. Like pressing the button that's next to the thing that says muted doesn't do it, which always confuses me, so I apologize. This won't take more than a minute or two, but we have this challenge where we get from our faculty for the citations, for the scholarly publications that we get for our faculty information system, the author and contributor information can be in any possible format. We just have a field which has a whole bunch of names in it, and they can be organized and delimited in any of a number of possible ways. So what I attempted to do is write something which is a complement to the existing name parser library that's cleverly enough called names parser, because it's meant to split up a list of names into the individual name components and then hand that over to name parser to actually do the parsing of the name. So right now you can see it, this is the GitHub page, and the thing I would draw your attention to is over here, which are just some examples of the huge variety of different formats for sets of names that you might find. If you look in the unit test, you can find far greater variety than here, but this just gives you an example where, you know, sometimes we have things separated with ands or commas. We have last names first, first names last. We have initials first, initials last, separated by commas, not separated by commas. And this does its best to pull those apart in some sensible way. You can see that all you need to do is feed it that string of names, and you will get back a list of human names, or a list of name strings, or a sensible concatenation of those. It's up on PyPy, so you can get it directly using pip install. That's all I got.
Well, thanks for giving us a tour. I know that I think most people working on VIVO will have to tackle this or try to tackle this problem at some point. So it's helpful to have a clear example of what you're doing.
Yeah, and I was you know, surprised that there was nothing out there already that did this. You know, there are lots of citation parsing libraries. Most of them are ancient and not supported, and none of them sort of separate out this name parsing component of it. Or they assume that there's a sensible format for that for the names string. And in our case, these are copied and pasted out of CVs, so they can be just about anything.
So oh, I'm sorry, there's a question here from Christina Harlow. Does this handle names with affiliation data included?
No, I don't think so. But if someone were to create a ticket with some examples, I'd be happy to take a crack at them.
She said, thank you. So your primary use case here is to take the author-co-author string and separate it out into individual entities, right?
Yeah, and then let human names, the existing human names library, name parser library, do the lifting of then parsing the name. It also does a little bit. It adds a little bit of improvement to the name parser library, which doesn't know how to figure out if a name is reversed. So you know, if you look at this example, like but O.B.
Yep.
Period. Right, where the initials follow it, it would think that but is the first name and O.B is the last name, and we're able to sort of look at that, recognize, oh, those are initials. They're, you know, they should really be in front. They're actually part of the first name or middle name, and but is the last name.
Yeah, that's probably a lot more common in the you know, author string where you see that last name comma first initials.
Yeah.
Where have you seen it have any hiccups? Have you had any chances to see things that it still struggles with, or?
Uh, so I have not gotten, now once I wrote this, I have not gotten back to actually running all of our data through it,
Right.
load it into VIVO to see what we get. Again, since in our case a lot of those strings are human entered, there are probably some errors it doesn't catch. But yeah, so that, I expect to have future improvements based on what I actually see in mass.
So once you parse it, so one of the things that we do here at Florida is we do create what we call author stubs. So we create a profile for a name that's on a publication, even if we don't have any other data with it.
Right.
What are you planning to do with these names once you parse them out?
So I think it's just my understanding of the VIVO best practices to create soft persons for those. Is that?
That's what we do. I don't know if it's a best practice, but it's what we've been doing. It makes it so that you can, search for them and find them. And then we do have a manual process where we go back and curate it and do the merging of stubs once we find out who they are. Like if we knew who Zanzibar Buck was and we got too many stubs, we'd go back and merge them together.
Right.
Ted, you got any thoughts on that? What were you guys doing at Brown?
For publications, we took the approach that we saw a few other implementations doing, where we left the author strings alone, but did create faux people for or faux person for the local author. So I think Duke does something similar. So we kind of punted on this particular part. But even, if you have some even fairly clean publication data coming from a system, this name parsing library that Justin's extended can be very helpful to, pull out the last name, first initial. So to do more sophisticated name matching. So we did use the library that he's extended here.
And you were also using the Harvard Catalyst Disambiguation web service too, right? Does that take names as input?
Yeah, and it's expecting structured data. So typically, if you're using that, you're sending your local researchers to the name service, so you would have that data structured. So we didn't use it in that setting. But this can be helpful if you're pulling names back from PubMed or Crossref and want to say, does this person have a last name first initial match with this other person? So this name parser library will help facilitate that.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic because I've been pulling data from NIH Reporter, trying to match it up with PubMed data, and sometimes they just, they totally mangle the names and come up with abbreviations in one that aren't in the other, and so, yeah, this would definitely help. Because I've written my own heuristics, which probably suck, to try and parse out the names so that I can do some kind of matching, some kind of simple matching, but I'm glad to see this.
And the library that Justin has extended here is it's a Python library. I was following it on GitHub, or still am. The maintainer of that's pretty responsive, so I've seen in the last 6 months or so people submit a different use case maybe that the library isn't handling, and he's updated the library to accommodate that.
Yes, I just clicked watch on GitHub. In case you guys aren't familiar with that, you can have it, troll the repo for you from somebody else. Any more questions for Justin? Justin, thank you very much for sharing that. I also want to point out that GW Libraries has quite a few GitHub repos out there, and I think Justin is also one of the authors of the VIVO to not LD repo, which you may want to go check out if you're interested in JSON and things like that. Not to put you on the spot, Justin, but that's also pretty interesting.
Thanks. Yeah, we're starting to work with it more internally and make sure that it actually works the way I think it works.
Everything's a process, right?
Yep. Slow ones.
Well, fantastic. Well, any other question for Nicholas or Justin? Man, you guys were super efficient today. That's all I got to say. We usually don't finish this quick.
So the next call will be December 1st, and we have one speaker lined up. Patrick West from RPI will be talking about some work they've done with Elasticsearch and a UI tool called Facet View that they've added on top of their VIVO instance to help or to create browsable interfaces. So that should be pretty exciting. But we have room for other talks. So if anyone wants to volunteer, you can use the sign-up sheet that we've been circulating.
Yeah, and again, these can be very short presentations. We're not trying to have you come up with a full conference presentation. We're just interested to get people to share their work with each other. Like, I had not seen the name parser library before. I think Ted was holding out on me. So I was excited to see that. And that's kind of the idea, that we're sharing these things with each other in a moderately informal format so that we can all be better together without having to try and reinvent the wheel. And again, GitHub is out there. Please, if you're not using GitHub, please think about using GitHub because it's easy to share. And again, very excited about this coming year for apps and tools. And we'd love to have all of you become members of the working group and proudly post your name on the DuraSpace Wiki. So please, if you're interested, send it along.
Chris, Ted, quick question.
Sure.
And then I've been under the impression that we're showing work that we are doing. Is it okay to present things that we find that we are using, like other people's code and tools that we say, hey, this is interesting, and we start using it in our work?
Yes, absolutely. That's yeah. We don't expect you to create everything that you talk about, although that's great. But really, just idea sharing. So I think a couple calls back, I talked about a tool that I've been using, a Python ETL tool. So yeah, definitely bring those ideas forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, please. Yes, I'm sorry if that wasn't clear. It's we call it standing on the shoulders of giants, right? So all the open source work that I've ever done is completely building off of what really smart people have done before me and not necessarily what I've done. So yeah, when you find things that are useful, personally, I'd like to see some better ontology viewers, for example. So as I'm working with these things with oboe IDs and I have to try and figure out what they are, I'm struggling with that. So that's something that's, Ted and I have talked about in the past. I don't know if everyone's using Protege, but I'd love to hear what other people are using in that area too. Maybe somebody can talk about that.
So Chris, by mentioning he would like to see ontology viewers, that brings up a good point that, if there is something you want to see and you don't really have a good example of it to show, let us know and maybe we can recruit somebody to talk about it. I think what Justin just showed with the name parsing tools, we could spend several calls on that because there's lots of different, it's a big problem. So it'd be good to hear from many people on different approaches and different tools. So if there's something, kind of a bigger idea like that you're interested in, let us know and we can try to find somebody to talk about it.
Yeah, I just kind of dropped it in there, but how many people were aware that there's Harvard's running an author disambiguation service for, at least for PubMed type authors? So maybe we could talk about that, Ted.
Yeah, I know Rodney from Dartmouth's on the call, and he's used it a bit. But yeah, it seems like something that would be of wider interest.
So again, you don't have to. We're not allowed to put you on the spot now, but if you think of anything after the call and you have an idea, like, hey, could you guys go recruit someone to talk about subject X, or I'm working on something here, we'd be happy to go do that.
There's also, I think we've had one person in the last year or so just present a question. I'm working on, I forget what he was working on, but X, and what are some ideas that people on the call have to move forward with that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a solution. It could also be just a discussion topic.
Mm-hmm. One last quick announcement, and then I'll let everyone get out of here a little bit early. I don't know if everyone saw the email come out. I think it was over the weekend, talk about moving the mailing lists to Google Groups. So I don't have a lot of information on that other than what came out in the email, but I'd say that you should probably think about catching up on that, because it looks like the mailing lists are going to move.
And there will be two lists, community and technical. So hopefully it'll make things a little easier. It was in Mike's weekly announcements.
Right.
Yeah, the plan is I'll be looking at doing the migration this week.
So you'll be taking names that have already subscribed and adding them to the new group? Is that true?
Hopefully. There's a limit on the number of subscriptions that you can put in at any one time, but I think we're low enough on the number of subscribers that we can get away with doing it.
So if someone on the call wants to be on the new list, would you recommend just waiting for you to do the migration, or should they go ahead and sign up?
They can go ahead and sign up. It won't make any difference. But if they sign up now, they will get bombarded with emails as we migrate the archive in.
And you said you'll be doing that within the week?
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe the next call that we have on December 1st, I'll do a mailing list update. Maybe we'll have some kind of definitive position at that point. Sounds like the migration will be done, and we just want to make sure that we don't leave anybody off. And then thank you again, Christina, for tweeting about the call today. So Ted and I are also on Twitter. So we usually we try to make it an announcement there, and then I should have a copy of the presentations up on YouTube today as well, and I'll tweet about that so people can send out a link and have other people watch the great demos. Well, thanks again, everybody, for coming. And unless there's any more questions or feedback, I think that's a wrap for today.
Yeah, thanks, Justin and Nicholas, for the talks.
Yes, thank you guys again for the talks. All right, take care. See you on December 1st. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.